Every person who's sitting inside of a jail or prison should begin thinking today about how they're going to emerge successfully with a job that will allow them to reach their highest potential. I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and I hope that you're going through our various courses that we create to help people prepare so that when they come back to society, they're coming back strong with their dignity intact and with opportunities to succeed. For that reason, I'm always reaching out to business leaders so that I can learn lessons that will not only help me as a formerly incarcerated person build my career, but also transmit that message back to more than 100,000 people in jail and prison that have access to these courses. Well, today I have the opportunity of introducing you to Ryan. He's a small business owner who is in an industry that I think provides a lot of opportunity for formerly incarcerated people. And he has been so generous to devote an hour to speak with us, but also to work closely with me in developing this lesson plan that appears as a part of this course. And we encourage you to work through that lesson plan so you can reach your highest potential. Ryan, I really want to thank you for taking the time out of running your business to speaking with us. Why don't we start by you telling the audience what business you're in?
Yeah, I'm the general manager of a small trucking company that started as a family business, where started by just purchasing and getting DOT authority to set up to run one truck, where I was the principal driver. And we've since grown this company to a 4-truck operation where I'm still a driver, but I spend the majority of my time managing, finding loads, and keeping 4 full-time truck drivers dutifully employed.
So Ryan, one of the things that we teach in our course is that anybody who faces a challenge in their life, if they spend time developing critical thinking skills, if they improve their writing skills, if they improve their verbal communication skills, and if they really develop a really solid work ethic, they can overcome the challenges of their past. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to take you back to the beginning of your career and just kind of explore how those principles really influenced your journey. But before I get there, could you tell our audience what you told me when we began of how much it cost to start a trucking business when it started?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's going to vary, obviously. There's several expenses that are pretty significant to get started in a small trucking company. If your intent is to start a small trucking company as an owner-operator with one unit, your main 2 expenses are going to be a down payment for a power unit, a tractor, which could range from anywhere from 10 to 15,000 to maybe up to 30, depending on your credit and what financing you're able to secure. And the second big one is going to be a down payment on insurance. If you're just starting out as an owner-operator, starting a small trucking company, insurance is definitely one of your bigger challenges, and they are for sure going to want a pretty sizable down payment. So if you add those 2 together, on average, I would say somewhere between 20 and 40,000 is going to be needed to get started with those 2 main items and a few other ancillary items, such as fees to start your corporation, to get your DOT authority, and things of that matter.
Well, that's really great information, and we'll kind of backtrack or engineer how somebody might put that type of capital together or begin thinking about that while they're inside of a jail or a prison. I will certainly show how I would have done that and what I would have learned while I was climbing through 26 years in prison. This is really valuable information. But just to carry it one step further before we get into the backstory, how long have you been in business, number one? And what was the revenues that you did in the first year, and what do you expect them to be in the subsequent years? So first of all, how long have you been in business, revenues, and how is it growing?
Yeah, good question. We started the business in January of 2020. I got my commercial driver's license late December, early January. Late December 2019, early January of 2020. We were able to put together the DOT authority and get everything set up with the truck in those months. And in 2020, with primarily one truck and me driving, we did start adding power units late in 2020. we're just over 400,000 in revenue for that first 12-month period.
And what did you expect it to grow in the second 12 months?
Well, we have 4 trucks operating full time now. It's pretty typical for we're operating solo units, so no teams currently. A typical solo unit can yield somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $30,000 per month in gross revenues. So if you do the math on that with 4 units, we're looking at probably 1.3 to 1.5 million in gross revenues for 2021 if things stay as they have been so far this year.
So those are really big numbers for somebody who's sitting inside of a jail or a prison and living on, hoping to get by on $100 to $200 a month. We're talking to a man who's really been a real model of excellence with regard to being a small businessman, creating jobs, contributing to the economy. And today we are going to go back to say how he got there, because I know it didn't happen by accident. Just like your success, if you're in a jail or a prison, is not going to happen by accident. It's going to require you to start off by defining success, documenting a strategy, putting your tools, tactics, and resources together, holding yourself accountable, and executing every single day. That's what we teach in our course, and I know I'm going to learn that lesson from this conversation with Ryan. So Ryan, why don't you backtrack a little bit? You look like you're a pretty young man. Why don't you tell us how you grew from childhood with regard to a commitment to education and what your first jobs were? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Utah, small community just north of Salt Lake City.
And what kind of student were you in school, primary school, elementary, junior high, high school?
I was a decent student. Certainly wasn't getting on the high honor roll or 4.0s all the time, but I did okay. I didn't love school. It definitely wasn't a passion of mine, but I did what it took to be successful. I certainly wasn't unsuccessful. So
you graduated. You did earn a high school diploma?
Yeah, I did get a high school diploma.
Many of the people in jail or prison don't have a high school diploma. In fact, I think I've read statistics that show the vast majority of people that go to prison do not have a high school diploma, but they have an opportunity to get a high school equivalency certificate, commonly known as a GED. Could you tell us what a high school diploma, what opportunities opened for you as you grew because you had a high school diploma? Was that ever an important role in your life?
Well, I don't think that there's ever a problem with having a high school diploma. But everyone should shoot for that, right? But as it relates to this business that we did and trucking generally, there's not going to be a requirement for that. So I guess a word of optimism that I would say towards the audience that may be interested in trucking that is in the prison system. If you don't have a high school diploma, that is in no way going to encumber any efforts that you want to put forth to becoming a full-time commercial truck driver and eventually parlaying that into owning a small trucking company of your own.
Great advice. And that's certainly going to be encouraging for a lot of people who are in jail or in prison that just don't have an aptitude or a desire to spend too much time going through intensive school studies and so on. We want to find opportunities for them that they can still become successful. And certainly that's something that you found in your life. What kind of jobs or career path opened for you what year did you graduate, first of all, and what kind of jobs opened for you after you graduated high school?
I graduated from high school in, I guess I will date myself now, in 1990. My first job as a quote unquote adult was a assistant terminal manager in a small warehouse / trucking company. And that's when I first was exposed to the trucking and transportation warehousing industry. And I've stayed in that industry ever since. And
when you say that you took that first job in the trucking industry, what were the duties associated with that job?
It was an entry level management job. So I was responsible for a certain aspect of the hiring and management of dock personnel, This particular business had inbound trucks that needed to be unloaded and sorted on their on the dock floor. And then once the inbound was all sorted, then it needed to be processed and loaded out for delivery to go direct to the retailers that were being served by this small company.
So did you start in that role right when you were 18 years old then?
No, I actually started that when I was 21.
What kind of work did you do before you got into the trucking space then?
Before I did that, I worked for an appliance store. I did deliveries from basically when I was 16. I started when I was 16, and until I was about 21, 22 time frame, I delivered and installed appliances in the area that I lived.
So how did your role increase as you left from appliance to trucking, and you started off in a managerial role, but then it grew? Is that right?
Yeah, that's fair. So in my first job, and I haven't had very many jobs, I've stuck with them for the most part. It was mostly me following instructions and working with a coworker to accomplish tasks. In this case, getting the items on the trucks, getting them to the house, getting them into the house, getting them installed, and going over them with the customer, making sure everything was working as it should. When I transitioned to management, it was more not just personal tasks, but now I had a group of people that I was responsible for to hold them accountable, to coach them, to motivate them, and to make sure the job got done. So not just by my labor and the labor of my partner in the example I just gave, but the collective work of a group was my responsibility. So I had to learn how to manage, to motivate, and to encourage people to do what needed to be done and to do it in the right way and efficiently and be effective.
And so those are really important lessons that I can tell you I would have really valued while I was in prison. And the takeaway for me is that if I spend time in jail, if I'm sitting inside of a jail cell or a prison, I understand that I'm not going to have to develop the managerial responsibility. I'm certainly not going to be able to drive a truck, except there are a few prisons that I was in where there were truck drivers and drivers that worked as part of the prison, but it's just very rare. Although I may not be able to develop the skill of managing other people or driving a truck, I can develop further my math skills and my English skills, my writing skills, my communication skills. And if I do that, I have to believe that would position me for higher levels of responsibility. Could you tell us, just to correct me if I am wrong, how math skills and communication skills contributed to your growth in your career, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. In this world we live in, technology is ever present. There is zero way that you're ever going to avoid using communication and math skills. Now, the good news here is you don't have to be a calculus wizard. When we talk about math skills, we're talking about general. Basically, really, in business, you're talking about accounting. We're talking about the ability to do minor work in spreadsheets. And again, not highly technical, being able to add columns together, do subtraction, simple multiplication. Nothing crazy that anyone that has the desire to get in there and refresh up on their skills can learn over a short period of time. Communication, you mentioned communication, that's great. Communication is everything. In business, if you can't communicate with any potential customers that you're seeking or any other stakeholders that you're needing their assistance to get the business going, in the example that we were talking about earlier, if you can't communicate, if you can't articulate what you're trying to accomplish, what you need, the reason why you're interacting with that person, there's going to be no possibility of progress in that conversation. So learning to communicate and being able to do those basic math skills, as you referenced, is absolutely essential to any business endeavor.
And that's why it's so important to just really hone down and spend time making sure that you are a master of not only addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, because if you've got more fluency with just basic math, you're going to be much farther along the line when it comes time to learning these spreadsheets that Ryan just spoke about. You may not have access to computers while you're in jail or prison, but when you come home, if you want to advance your career prospects and possibly go into business on your own, you really make things easier if you can learn an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or any type of electronic spreadsheet. It just saves so much time. And with regard to communication, as you'll learn from these lessons, there's a few components of communication. Learn how to put words into sentences and sentences into paragraphs. Learn how to respond critically, thinking, how are the words that I am using going to influence the customers I meet or the people I manage and the business that I build? All of that, I think what I heard from Ryan is crucial and essential to overcoming the problems that many people face who are in prison. So could you tell us, Ryan, how long you stayed? You said that you didn't shift jobs very frequently. How long did you stay with that company that gave you opportunities?
I worked with the company I referenced, the small warehousing and trucking company, for a little bit under 3 years.
And why did you transition after those 3 years?
I was looking for a part-time opportunity so I could finish my schooling. I was going to school part-time while I was working the full-time job because I didn't really have a passion for school, but I knew I didn't know that I needed to get a degree, but I decided that it was probably a good idea to attack that and get that done. So after about 3 years in that job, I resigned that position and took a part-time position also in the warehousing industry, transportation industry, and finished up my degree and got a 4-year bachelor's degree in business.
Well, that shows a real commitment, and I'm going to drill down on that in a little bit, because I think what that tells me, if I were in prison, is if I'm looking at a successful guy like Ryan, somebody who starts a company with a certain amount of capital and grows, the reason that he got there, I would say college, the more we learn, the more we put ourselves in a position for new opportunities. But I will ask him to elaborate on that in just a moment. What I'd like to ask you first, Ryan, is what skills are important for somebody who is going to build a career in a warehouse like you described? What is that just brawn work of moving boxes, or are there other skills like organizational skills, or what other skills are important to build a career in a warehouse?
Okay, so just entry-level warehousing person, the number one skill, and maybe it's not a skill, but I think it's more of an attribute, a personal attribute, is someone that has found a way to develop a strong work ethic. You're never going to get anywhere in life, in the business world, and achieve outside of the prison system, or I would even argue within, without a strong work ethic. If you don't want to get out of bed and get to work in time, if you don't want to show up to those shifts that you've been assigned on time, you're probably not going to maintain that employment very long. If when you show up, your attitude is one of, I want to go home right now. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do the tasks that I've signed up to do for this job. I just want to get my paycheck and go home. Also, that's not a sign of a strong work ethic. So the desire to get the work done, the attitude of having the desire to learn and do a good job while you're there, those things are the most important. And if you have those, you can easily grow into other opportunities. You're going to learn, you're going to grow, you're going to develop, and things are going to happen for you. But if you don't have those things probably aren't going to happen for you. So those are absolutely foundational, in my opinion.
And I can tell you that is a lesson I learned from leaders like Ryan when I was sitting in jail or prison. I developed a habit of waking up really early when I was in prison, and it stays with me today. I've been home from prison now for, it'll be 8 years in August of 2021. I concluded 26 years in prison in August of 2013. And still to this day, I start my work day around 3:00 in the morning. That was a habit I picked up in prison after listening to people like Ryan, who kind of just continuously said it's the early bird that gets the worm. And what I found in prison, it was a good habit, was to start training myself to wake up without an alarm clock when everybody else was still sleeping, I could use that time, I felt, to start preparing myself for the challenges I would face when I came home. And we just heard from a person who's done it. If you wake up early, if you've got a solid work ethic, you've got a good shot of growing. So thank you for giving us that. But what other skills does somebody have to have when they're in a warehouse besides having a great work ethic and discipline? Is it just strength, or do they have to know how to communicate well in that role as well? Or do they advance possibilities for growth if they've got other skills?
Yeah, sure. So obviously having the ability physically to do the job is key. But in addition to that, usually in most warehouse environments, there's going to be an element of technology that's involved. It may be a scanner tool of some sort. It may, various electronic tools that are used to either keep track of or to move items throughout the facility. Additionally, organization is definitely going to be part of almost any transportation or warehousing job. You're not just moving items from point A to point B just for the sake of moving them. You're doing it because there's a reason why they need to be sorted in some cases, or moved from one truck to another. It's logistic. There's a logistical reason for it, and accuracy in getting each parcel, package, item, if you will, from the one location to the secondary location so it can make it to its final destination is important. So organization, accuracy, attention to detail are also very important attributes that someone is going to want to either have, or at the very least look for ways to develop as they're looking to getting into the transportation and warehousing industry.
And what's really important for people who are formerly incarcerated to realize is that you may not have access to that technology right now, but learning technology requires discipline. It requires an ability to comprehend sometimes things that are somewhat complex. And so the more somebody develops a skill in reading and writing and comprehension, the more they're going to advance prospect for success. When I went to prison, technology didn't exist to the extent that it does today. The internet didn't exist. Cell phones didn't exist. We couldn't send emails. There was a learning curve for me to build my business, which is really centered on technology. But I really could accelerate because I spent so much time trying to develop communication skills while I was in prison. And that's why I really encourage you, if you're working through our courses, to go through all of the lessons like the ones that Ryan so generously worked to help me create. We created these lessons because we want to give you practical tools that will help you transition into society and reach your highest potential. And one lesson that I think you can learn from Ryan is that you should never stop investing in yourself. And now I'm going to turn to that section that he just spoke with us about. And he knew that he wanted to go back to college and study business. Can you tell us if after you got a business degree and you made that commitment and the sacrifice, because certainly you must have taken a pay cut to move to a part-time job and devote your time to education, but tell us how that influenced the rest of your career. What did you do after you went to college?
Well, once I finished, I was able to transition to a full-time position within the organization that I was previously working part-time in, and to get a salary that was competitive at that time and gave me another launch pad for further growth within the industry. So many jobs then required a 4-year degree in transportation and warehousing management. It's not that way as much anymore, which is good news for many of the people that are watching this video. The demand for good labor and also good management within the transportation and warehousing industry is not really driven very heavily right now upon having a 4-year degree. So that's great news for people that are watching this video.
Before you continue from there, I'm going to just interrupt you and ask you a question. So it's not require, which is great news for a lot of people in jail or prison. But if somebody has it in some kind of way, does that differentiate them or put them on a different track with employers?
It could definitely be a differentiator. but not going to say in any way that is the differentiator. The strongest differentiator is going to be the skills, attributes, and
Work ethic.
benefits that you bring to the table. Again, the work ethic, the things that I talked about a few moments ago, that is going to differentiate more than a degree. Now, granted, if there's two candidates for a certain entry level or maybe slightly above entry level position that are equally qualified and management's having a hard time choosing, sure, the degree could tip the hat towards the person that has it versus the one that doesn't. But there's lots of opportunity in the sector. And if you have the other attributes that we have discussed, you're not going to be heavily encumbered by not having a college degree.
So with a college degree, Ryan, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but with a college degree, did your employers give you more opportunities as you stayed with that company? Because earlier you had said that you didn't change jobs very frequently. So I'm going to assume you were there for a long time. If that's accurate, please let us know how your employers responded to both your work ethic and your college degree, and how long you stayed with the company.
Okay. Well, I think one thing that a college degree for sure does and shows about a person is that if you're willing to invest in yourself, both obviously there's a good time element and there's an opportunity cost involved, an event, and of course the raw dollars that you have to put out to pay for this degree. If you're willing to do that and a company or groups of individuals see that you've done that, it shows that you're willing to invest in yourself. If you've been willing to make that investment in yourself, I think there's a higher probability that another entity, in this case a corporation, is going to have the desire and willingness to invest in you and help you along the course towards a longer and increasingly with your responsibilities and roles increasing throughout time.
And how did that work out for you? You were there for how long, and how did your roles change over time?
I worked at this particular company for 22 years. Started as an entry level processor, and worked all the way up through the various entry level management positions, up to a senior management level of transportation management.
And as a person with a senior management role, how many people, what were your responsibilities in that capacity?
My responsibilities were to manage a group of dispatchers and administrative folks who ran the day-to-day operation, and we had a group of about 500 drivers, and they were the operators of the trucks that moved the parcels from city to city and state to state.
So in that role, does that mean that you had responsibility for more than 500 people, or did you supervise a series of managers that each of them had responsibility for a group of people? How did you guys organize that many people?
Well, ultimately, if you're the head of the department, which was the case in what I just described, I'm responsible for the entire group, and in this case, about 500 drivers, and all of the administrative and management layers below that to allow the organization to function. But as far as direct reports, in this case, I had three to four direct reports, and then those direct reports that reported to me had their string of direct reports, and so on and so forth down the chain.
And so you said that you were there for 17 years. What prompted you to make a change after that much of an investment you made with one company?
It's actually 22. And
it's not 22 years. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it was 22 years with that company, and then something happened that you wanted to change. What opportunity opened that caused you to want to make a change?
It's time for a change. Working for a big company is one thing. Starting a small venture, small family business that's much smaller in scope, maybe has a few less moving parts, but also hopefully has a potential for higher rewards financially, is something that was determined to be worth the risk and worth the transition. So here we are.
So that was the prompt that made you join this as a general manager of this family business. Is you wanted more freedom of time, maybe, and opportunities for a higher level of income. You said that it took about, how much does a truck cost when you want to go into that business? Earlier you'd mentioned a down payment. I think you recall between $15,000 and $30,000. What is the actual price of a vehicle or a tractor? I think you call it.
Yeah, they are called tractors. To your point, lots of variability there. To be fair, the average person that starts a small trucking company, gets a CDL, and first becomes an owner operator, operating the one truck in that business that they're associated with, probably not going to buy a new truck. But to answer your question directly, a brand new sleeper truck of any of the major four brands is going to run you somewhere between $150,000 and $165,000. That being said, a rundown, high risk asset, let's say something that's 10 or more years old, that's got 1.5 million miles on it, probably is going to be somewhere in the high teens to low 20s. And something in the middle of the road, depending on what your financial abilities are to secure this asset, you could be somewhere in the $40,000 to $60,000 range and get something that's got a high probability of being a reliable power unit. Something that's got probably somewhere in the 500,000 to maybe 600,000 miles on it. If you can find something with a good maintenance history and looks like it's been well cared for, you got a pretty reasonably high opportunity of having a reliable piece of equipment in that price range. So again, short answer, it could range from 20,000 all the way up to 160, 165,000, depending on what you are able to procure at that time and what you're looking for as far as newness versus something that's not quite as new.
Well, there's a lot to digest in those numbers, and I'm going to want to dig a little bit deeper in them. But before I get there, you'd mentioned the word CDL to get a CDL license. Could you tell us what steps a person would have to take after he's gotten out of prison to get a CDL license? How long does it take? And then I'll have a follow-up question after that.
Yeah, sure. CDL, Class A CDL, stands for Commercial Driver's License. A Class A on your CDL is what allows you to operate a tractor-trailer combination, in most cases, which gives you the ability to operate up to about 80,000 pounds of gross vehicle weight. As far as how to get it, the easiest and cleanest way for most people is going to be to find a truck driving school in the area in which you reside. They have courses that are available in pretty much every city in the United States that train people and give them all of the tools they need to get this license and then to go out in the marketplace. Additionally, there are some of the larger trucking companies that have schools in-house within the walls of their organization. They actually do all of the training, mentoring, and help people that want to drive get that Class A CDL, and then they provide on-the-job training as well. So there's several avenues. Some of them can cost, I'd say, up to $5,000 or $6,000 if you wanted to pay cash up front. Others, like I said, through companies, you're basically signing a agreement with them that if they put you through their school, that you will work for them and provide service under their company umbrella for a certain period of time. Additionally, there are programs, and I'm not familiar with all of them, but there are also grant programs and educational programs out there put out by various government entities that help with the financing of these schools if you choose to go through one that's not affiliated with one of the trucking companies that I referenced.
And certainly these are really high growth opportunities with the advancement of internet shopping, which is a big thing out here. I rarely go to the store. I buy everything from Amazon, and that's, of course, delivered by somebody who has a truck. How have you seen the growth of the industry with the advent of the internet and online shopping?
Yeah, the transportation and warehousing industry is absolutely on fire with opportunity. In fact, right now, I don't know that there's ever been a time within the 25 years or so that I've been within the industry where there's been a higher demand for drivers. For whatever reason, there's certain demographics of the United States don't want to be truck drivers, and so there's a shortage. And I'm not just talking about a shortage of of experienced and tenured drivers. I'm talking about a shortage of entry level drivers that want to get into the industry. That being said, just to give you an idea, these are not low paying jobs. If you are willing to go out and drive on a full time basis, somewhere between 40 and 60 hours a week, you for sure are going to be north of $60,000 your first year in income. It's inconceivable that you wouldn't be able to achieve at least that level. And many drivers operating trucks that are not their own are making somewhere between $70 and $85,000 a year operating these vehicles. So lots of opportunity and lots of good wages to be made in this industry.
Yeah, and you just gave us wages for somebody that was driving for somebody for another person that owns the truck. What if the person were able to put a business plan together, they have some CDL experience, and they want to launch their own venture? You'd said that a person could acquire and start that business with $40,000 to $50,000 in capital. If that person were able to do that, he had the credit, he put the $50,000 together with family and friends, and he got started. What would that, and I know it's going to depend, on a person's work ethic and how successful he is in getting deals or getting transactions, but what's the earning range for that individual that has the 50,000, then the credit to buy one of these vehicles?
Obviously, as you stated, lots of variables there, right? But if you're in a position with a partner or without to go out and start a small business on your own, you have gone through the process to get your Class A CDL and have some experience and you're comfortable operating the equipment, it is not outside of the realm of possibility where, in addition to the wages, I would recommend paying yourself the same wage that you would get if you were working for somebody else. So in addition to your wage, again, let's use the $60,000 to $80,000 number. That's pretty reasonable. In addition to that, you should be able to, worst case scenario, add another $30,000 to $50,000 on top of that first year for business profits for that one truck. That's a reasonable expectation.
And the cool thing about what Ryan just described is he said, if you buy the vehicle, you're going to pay yourself the same wage that you would pay somebody else to be driving that vehicle, but there would be an additional $30,000 or so of a spread that you could expect to earn. And I got to take it, that's after fuel expenses, insurance expenses, and the cost of owning the vehicle. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when I say that, I'm talking about, of a net income of the business after paying all expenses. Obviously, the biggest expense to the business is going to be the labor, which in this case, you as the operator are going to be earning. But after all expenses, yeah, somewhere between 30 and 50 is a good expectation. Now, that being said, here's where it gets interesting. If you're the type of person that wants growth, you are driven to expand your horizons, if you will, and you want to turn it into more than just a one truck business, you can take that profitability number that I just floated out there and multiply it by any number of power units that you can that you find a way to get financed and that you can provide insurance for and do all those things, and multiplication kicks in, and the numbers can get quite large if you have the right skills, abilities, desires, and want to grow the business into something more. And that's where the beauty of being a small business owner is relative to the previous 22 years of my career is I have the multiplication efforts of employees operating for the company that can give extra income to my family, to the company, instead of just the wage power of my labor. So.
I think that's the really valuable lesson that would have been really powerful for me and given me the reason to want to get up early in the morning, develop my communication skills, because Ryan had spoken about how important that is, develop my math skills, develop my knowledge of the general business environment, because I could leverage all of that to open new opportunities, not only for my family, but for other people that wanted to find jobs. And Ryan, I just really want to thank you as we're coming to the end of our lesson today for taking time out of your busy career and business to join our efforts of teaching and inspiring hundreds of thousands of people who are serving time in jails and prisons of America. Many of them are going to be looking for employment, and what you've given us today is a pathway for them to create their own jobs. And I'm going to leave the last word with you. Actually, before I go to the last word, I would like to just recap what I learned from you and how it relates to the courses that we teach inside of jails and prisons. And then I'll give you the last word to kind of correct me and help me fill in the blanks of what I left out. Okay?
Very well.
So ladies and gentlemen and at-risk youth who are going through the Prison Professors program, I'm really thankful to you for listening and learning. This is the exact kind of man that would have kept me motivated while I was in prison, because when I listened to him, I say, well, he is telling me as a person who's in prison now, I don't always have to be beholden to a job or answering questions about my background. If I develop a skill set, a work ethic, communication skills, I can create my own job. And this is how he did it. He really spoke about really defining success in his life. We heard him talking about he graduated college. He continued to invest in himself. High school, he got some experience on the job, but he wanted to go back and educate himself some more and got a college degree, even though it wasn't necessary. He used that to differentiate himself and advance into a business where he stayed for 22 years. Then he realized he'd learned enough and it was time to start pursuing the American dream of being a small business owner, and started a company. But he couldn't have done it if he didn't follow the same steps that are part of this course. You got to, first of all, take action. You start off with this commitment to success. And if you make that commitment to success with 100% effort, you can really advance the ball. Two, is in the second, it's actually the third module of our course. You got to see yourself as being successful. He saw himself as owning a truck, as developing his business, and now he has 4 trucks and employs a livelihood for different families as well as his own. The next module in our course is that concept of taking action. You can't just talk about wanting to be successful like many people in prison do. You got to put in the work, and the more work you put in, the more opportunities are going to open. The next module in our course is about accountability. You heard him saying earlier about the importance of taking time off. You can only drive so many hours while you're on the road, and you've got to make sure that your vehicle, your tractor, is the maintenance records are right. You can measure your earning capacity, not only for yourself, but for the people that are working with you and developing your team. The next module in our course is about being aware and creating opportunities. Clearly, he stayed in this career track for multiple decades. And as a result, he was aware that there came a time when the time was right for him to move on. He seized the initiative, he seized the opportunity, and people became aware of him clearly because his business is growing. The next module in our course is talking about being authentic. And if there's nothing else you learned from this lesson, it's that Ryan's authentic. He's the real deal. He doesn't just talk about being successful. He did it every day for more than 20 years. And if you're sitting in a jail or a prison, I'm encouraging you, be authentic. Don't talk about wanting to position yourself for success. Don't be a statistic that goes back to prison. Start sowing seeds right now for your own career. And then the next module in our course talks about the importance of celebrating little achievements. Although you may not be able to take a CDL exam right now, you could learn a lot more about the industry by paying attention to the leaders we profile in our program and really going through the lesson plans as well. And finally, the last module is about sowing seeds of gratitude and of appreciation for the blessings that come our way. Certainly, Ryan has done that by volunteering his time to create this product so that we could teach and inspire people from at-risk backgrounds. And he's also doing some work on the back end by helping us develop the course that accompanies this video. So Ryan, I really want to thank you for spending time with us. You are now a prison professor, and I'm going to leave you the last word of anything you might want to share with more than 100,000 people that are in jails and prisons across America about the trucking industry or small business or anything else that you might want to leave them with.
Great. Thank you very much. I think in closing, the biggest thing that I would want to convey to this audience is a message of hope. You're in a jail or a prison right now where your freedom's not something that you have, and you're watching this video, so you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about what you're going to do when you get out. The message that I hope very specifically is within the industry that I'm in, transportation and warehousing. Again, let's be more specific. Transportation, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities that are good paying jobs that are in many, many cases, and I might even go so far as saying most cases, are not going to judge, or you're not going to be encumbered by your history. You know, if you have a high level misdemeanor or a felony on your record, you can still enter the transportation and warehousing industry and be successful. You can be a truck driver. You can make a good living as a truck driver for many, many companies. There'll be some that you can't, but many that you can. There's nothing that's happened to your past that would stop you from doing this, and then transition it if you have the desire, the work ethic, and all those things we've discussed, from parlaying that into a business opportunity and being a business owner. So again, the message of hope. Things are not over. There are opportunities out there that can allow you to make a good living for you, your family, your future family, whatever the case may be. So hang in there, dig in, do what it takes to be successful, and know that there are opportunities waiting for you. So that's my message.
The wisdom of Ryan, a successful small business owner who's giving hope to people in jails and prisons across America. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe or like us on Facebook. We are doing our best to be the change that we want to see in the world. If you're inside of a jail or a prison, I really do encourage you to complete the attached lesson and earn your way to freedom. Thank you.